Welcome to Global World, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. The United States and China stand as the world's two largest economies, each wielding immense influence over global markets, finance, and innovation. Their economic might is matched only by their ambitions, and the decisions they make ripple across continents, affecting billions of lives. The relationship between these two giants is a cornerstone of global trade and stability. When they cooperate, the world prospers, but when they clash, uncertainty spreads, shaking markets and governments everywhere. Every move is watched anxiously by citizens, investors, and leaders around the globe, as headlines about tariffs, sanctions, and negotiations dominate the news cycle. Right now, tensions are at a breaking point, with both sides digging in and the world holding its breath for what comes next. President Trump has taken a hard line against what he calls China's unfair trade practices, imposing tariffs and demanding structural reforms to protect American industries and jobs. Meanwhile, President Xi Jinping is determined to assert China's growing power, defending his nation's interests and pushing back against what he sees as foreign interference. This standoff is about far more than just money. It's a battle over national pride, access to strategic resources, technological leadership, and the very future of global power dynamics. The conflict has real, tangible consequences. American farmers are left with unsold crops, facing financial uncertainty as export markets dry up and prices fall. At the same time, high-tech industries around the world depend on Chinese materials and manufacturing, making the standoff a threat to global supply chains and innovation. As we enter 2026, the two superpowers are at a crossroads. Will they find common ground and negotiate a new path forward, or will the trade war deepen, with even greater consequences for the world economy? Understanding the demands, rejections, and far-reaching consequences of this standoff is key to grasping what's truly at stake for every nation, business, and individual. Let's break down how we arrived at this critical moment and explore what the future might hold for the world's two economic giants, and for all of us. In October 2025, President Trump issued three non-negotiable demands to China. First, he insisted China guarantee a steady supply of rare earth minerals, vital for U.S. industries and defense. Second, he demanded China crack down on the flow of fentanyl and its precursors, fueling America's opioid crisis. Third, he called for China to immediately resume large-scale purchases of U.S. soybeans, a lifeline for struggling American farmers. These demands mixed strategic, social, and economic priorities, and were delivered with unmistakable force. Trump's message: the U.S. would not back down. The world waited to see if China would yield or retaliate, knowing the outcome could reshape global trade. These 3 points became the core of the American position. The stage was set for Beijing's response. China's answer was swift and resolute, a flat rejection of Trump's ultimatum, delivered with unmistakable clarity. The Chinese leadership wasted no time in making their stance known to the world, signaling that they would not be pressured or intimidated by foreign demands, no matter how forceful. In Beijing, officials viewed the U.S. demands as an overt attempt to dictate terms and infringe upon China's sovereignty. The government's response was not just about policy. It was about national pride, and the message that China would defend its interests at all costs. Rather than backing down, China struck back with a powerful countermove, imposing strict export controls on rare earth minerals. These minerals are essential for manufacturing everything from smartphones to advanced military equipment, and China's dominance in this sector gave it a potent bargaining chip. By leveraging its control over these critical supply chains, China demonstrated its willingness to use economic power as a form of strategic leverage. The world watched as Beijing flexed its industrial muscle, making it clear that it could disrupt global markets if provoked. Chinese officials insisted their actions were defensive, not aggressive, framing the export controls as a necessary response to external threats. Yet the underlying message was unmistakable: China would not be bullied or coerced into submission. The rare earth restrictions sent shockwaves through U.S. manufacturing, especially in the defense and technology sectors, where these materials are vital. American companies and policymakers suddenly faced the real possibility of supply shortages and production delays. What began as a dispute over tariffs quickly escalated into a high-stakes battle for control over essential resources, with both nations seeking to outmaneuver the other in a rapidly intensifying trade war. As negotiations stalled and rhetoric hardened, both sides dug in, leaving little room for compromise or de-escalation. The prospect of a quick resolution faded, replaced by uncertainty and growing tension. Around the globe, markets trembled and investors grew anxious, bracing for a prolonged and risky economic confrontation that threatened to disrupt international trade and growth. With the world economy now hanging in the balance, leaders and businesses everywhere watched nervously, aware that the outcome of this standoff could reshape the global order for years to come. Rare earth minerals, 17 metallic elements, are essential to modern technology, from smartphones to fighter jets. While not truly rare, they're difficult and costly to mine and process. China dominates both mining and refining, making the US heavily dependent on its supply. These minerals are crucial for US defense systems and high-tech industries. America's lack of domestic processing capacity is a strategic vulnerability. China's export controls sent shockwaves through the NA. Benteinbers, bonen sian, den todrisken si yidur and dig ben. Or non-indur in dun dao. The conflict over rare earths turned a trade dispute into a national security crisis. Economic interdependence became a weapon, giving China a powerful bargaining chip. The US now faced the reality of its deep reliance on a rival nation. Tariffs, taxes on imports, became the main weapon in this trade war. Trump's administration imposed steep tariffs on Chinese goods, aiming to pressure Beijing and protect US industries. In response, China hit back with tariffs targeting American products, especially agriculture. The threat of a 100% tariff on all Chinese imports loomed, risking massive price hikes for American consumers. Tariffs are a double-edged sword. They hurt both sides, raising costs for businesses and families. The tit-for-tat escalation created uncertainty, making it hard for companies to plan and invest. American farmers and manufacturers felt the pain as markets shrank and costs soared. The cycle of retaliation pushed both economies toward the brink. The trade war's ripple effects threatened global growth. The stakes had never been higher. No one felt China's retaliation more than American soybean farmers. China, once their biggest customer, stopped buying US soybeans, devastating the Midwest. Farmers were left with unsold crops, collapsing prices, and overflowing silos. Many faced bankruptcy, after generations on the land. The loss of the Chinese market created a crisis in rural America. Trump's demand for China to resume purchases was a direct response to this pain. Farmers supported a tougher stance on China, but the economic fallout was severe. Until a deal is reached, they remain caught in the crossfire. Their livelihoods now depend on the outcome of this high-stakes standoff. The trade war's human cost is real and ongoing. The trade dispute isn't just about money, it's also about the deadly fentanyl crisis. Fentanyl, a synthetic opioid, has fueled a wave of overdose deaths in the US. Washington blames China as the main source of illicit fentanyl and its chemical precursors. Trump's demand for a crackdown added moral urgency to the trade talks. China has taken some steps, but also argues the root problem lies in US demand and overprescription. The issue has become a flashpoint, complicating negotiations and fueling mistrust. For the US, it's about holding China accountable for a public health emergency. For China, it's about sovereignty and resisting blame. The fentanyl crisis has made the trade conflict even harder to resolve. Economic and human costs are now deeply intertwined. Despite the escalation, both sides say they prefer negotiation over all-out trade war. Behind the scenes, officials continue to search for a way out of the conflict. In October 2025, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng held a virtual meeting described as constructive. Plans were made for further talks in Malaysia and a potential Trump-Xi meeting at the APEC summit in South Korea. High-level diplomacy is often key to breaking deadlocks, but the gap between the two sides remains vast. U.S. demands for change clash with China's insistence on sovereignty. Broader tensions, from Venezuela to Taiwan, threaten to spill over and derail progress. The path to compromise is narrow and fraught with risk. The world waits to see if diplomacy can prevail. As 2026 begins, the US and China stand at a crossroads, conflict or compromise. The choices made in the coming months will not only define the relationship between these two superpowers, but also set the tone for the global order. The world holds its breath, watching as tensions simmer and leaders weigh their options. A full-scale trade war would mean soaring prices, disrupted supply chains, and global economic turmoil. Everyday consumers could face shortages of essential goods, while businesses struggle to adapt to rapidly changing regulations and tariffs. The ripple effects would be felt far beyond the US and China, impacting economies from Europe to Africa and Latin America. China's rare earth restrictions and US tariff threats could cripple industries on both sides. High-tech manufacturing, automotive, and even defense sectors would be at risk as critical components become scarce or prohibitively expensive. The stakes are high, and the consequences could be long-lasting. The alternative is negotiation. The US moderates demands, China offers concessions, and both step back from the brink. Through dialogue, there is a chance to rebuild trust and create a framework for cooperation rather than confrontation. Compromise could open the door to new opportunities for trade and innovation. A deal might see China buying more US goods and cracking down on fentanyl in exchange for tariff relief. Such agreements could help stabilize markets, protect jobs, and address pressing issues like the opioid crisis, showing that diplomacy can deliver real-world results. Solving the rare earths issue will require long-term investment and trust. Both nations must commit to diversifying supply chains, investing in new technologies, and fostering collaboration between scientists and engineers. Only then can they reduce vulnerabilities and ensure future stability. The outcome depends on the political will of both leaders. Their ability to look beyond short-term gains and focus on lasting peace and prosperity will determine the path forward. Scheduled talks offer hope, but deep mistrust makes any agreement fragile. Every word and gesture will be scrutinized, and even small missteps could unravel progress. The world is watching. Will these giants choose confrontation, or find the wisdom to build a more stable relationship? Billions of lives and livelihoods hang in the balance as the international community hopes for a peaceful resolution. The next chapter will shape the global economy for years to come, influencing everything from technological innovation to the price of everyday goods. The stakes could not be higher.